Today's video is one of the rare occasions where great white sharks were documented hunting people in packs. A group of 8 man-eating sharks stalked and killed 2 young boys after they were swept out to sea by the current, resulting in one of the most gruesome shark attacks in history. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying shark attack of Manuel García and Carlos Díaz. Welcome to Final Affliction. Great white sharks have been portrayed as the most ferocious and dangerous creatures in the ocean ever since the release of Jaws in 1975. But what if instead of one shark haunting the waters, 2 or even more were working together as a group? Sharks are much older than dinosaurs. Their ancestry dates back more than 400 million years, and they're one of evolution's greatest success stories. The torpedo shape of the great white is built for speeds up to 35 miles per hour, and there are teeth, 300 total in up to 7 rows. But more than its brawn, the great white shark has a tremendous brain that coordinates all the highly developed senses of the sufficient hunter. Its prey, including seals and dolphins, are very clever animals, and the shark has to have enough brains to outsmart them. Despite their reputation as lone hunters, there is now significant Mexican research showing that great white sharks will cooperate with one another, hunting in groups and sharing the spoils. Scientists say research of Mexico's Guadalupe Island in the Pacific Ocean shows great white sharks are sociable and will sometimes work together to increase their chances of catching prey. A team of scientists from Florida International University created a social tag tracking device to put on the great white sharks. With a video camera and sensors detecting the shark's acceleration, depth, and direction, the device also has receivers to detect when other sharks are near them. The team then put devices on various male and female white sharks over a 4-year period. The data showed that instead of being lone hunters, sharks preferred to be in and hunt in groups of the same sex. However, their ways of hunting were unique. They would take turns patrolling smaller prey like seal colonies, but when it came to hunting larger prey, they would often hunt in groups, working together to take down its prey. Scientists proposed that white sharks would even share information on the location of the remains of large prey with other sharks, with research confirming that great whites tend to hunt smaller prey like seals individually. And with most attacks on humans being mistaken identity to that of a seal, it only makes sense that most shark attacks are the work of a single shark. Despite the overwhelming majority of great white shark attacks on humans being the work of a lone attacker, the brutal attack in today's story is an example of a group of 8 great white sharks working together to hunt and kill 3 young boys. 16-year-old Raymond Perez and his 2 best friends, Manuel García and Carlos Díaz from Rio Jaina, Dominican Republic, did everything together. They'd grown up together since babies, and the group of 3 were inseparable. On August 12, 1963, the 3 boys were enjoying the last bit of their summer vacation, swimming off the breakwater in the port of Rio Jaina. Breakwaters are designed primarily to protect ports from the rough seas. Commonly made out of rocks, they often enticed swimmers to walk along them or swim next to them while unaware of the dangers. Climbing on breakwaters often results in falling due to how slippery they become with the constant waves splashing over them. People who climb the breakwaters often cut their feet on mussels and other sea life that form on the rocks submerged in the water. The sea around the breakwater often forms riptides and strong currents that could drown unsuspecting swimmers. Or in the case of Raymond and his 2 friends, swimmers can be slammed up against the rocks of the breakwater, resulting in serious injury or worse. It was unusually hot on the fateful day the boys arrived at Port Rio Jaina. The thought of sitting on the breakwater and dipping their feet in the water was just too tempting for the boys to ignore. And so, within a few minutes, they found themselves climbing on the slippery rock wall of the breakwater. They'd been to this exact location several times before and witnessed massive waves crashing against the rocks. But on this beautiful day, the water was calm, and so they decided to jump in beside the wall. They took turns jumping off the breakwater into the sea, diving to the bottom and having fun cooling off in the water. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, dark clouds rolled in over the boys and the water started to become choppy and rough. Within a minute, fierce waves began to throw the boys against the wall of the breakwater before sweeping them back into the ocean, only to be thrown against the rocks again by the ever-increasing force of the water. As the boys were propelled onto the rocks, Carlos managed to grab onto the wall and escape, while Raymond and Manuel were yet again swept back into the sea by the currents. Carlos stood on the rocks, waiting for the waves to force his friends onto the wall again, where he could grab hold of them and help them to safety. However, as the water slammed down onto the rocks, it swept Carlos off his feet and into the water once again. His arm had a strange burning sensation, and upon checking it, he noticed his arm was severely cut open and bleeding from falling on the rocks. Manuel had also severely cut his upper right thigh upon being thrown onto the rocks by the waves, making it hard for him to swim and stay afloat in the rough waters. Miraculously, Raymond was able to latch onto the rocks on the wall and pull himself out of the water to safety, but the current swept his two friends hundreds of feet into the sea away from the shore. All Raymond could do was hang on to the rocks for dear life as the waves crashed down on top of him, watching as his two friends struggled to swim back to shore. They'd both been injured and were bleeding from their wounds received from being thrown by the sea against the breakwater. As they tried to swim back to shore, their movements were not smooth and continuous, and they became very desperate and fearful they might drown before making it back to shore. Little did they know that drowning was the least of their worries. As the two boys struggled to swim back to shore, Manuel felt something large bump against his hip bone right above the cut on his thigh. He immediately started thrashing around and trying to feel around for whatever just bumped him under the water. His heart sank in his chest as Carlos alerted him of several shark fins breaking the surface close by. Sharks can smell blood from hundreds of meters away in concentrations as low as 1 part per million, and the two boys were bleeding excessively from their wounds, alerting a pack of great white sharks to the area for an easy meal. Sharks also have an acute sense of hearing and are sensitive to low-frequency signals. They're able to track sounds and are particularly attracted to sounds made by wounded prey, especially the sound of thrashing in the water, the exact sound that Carlos and Manuel were making as they were desperately trying to swim back to the shore while injured. The boys began to hear Raymond yelling from the breakwater, warning them of the sharks, telling them to swim as fast as they could to the shore. All of a sudden, Manuel screams in fear as he feels another bump from under the water, this time with enough force to lift him partially out of the water. As Carlos swam over to Manuel to calm him down, suddenly Manuel was launched completely out of the water into the air. Still in midair, a second shark came torpedoing out of the water like a rocket, chomping Manuel's belly in its jaws before crashing down into the water beside Carlos. This was witnessed by several onlookers on the beach who immediately began looking for help. Carlos began to swim in fear as fast as he could towards the shore. The pain from his injuries was now seemingly gone, with all the adrenaline surging through his body. He could see several dorsal fins break the surface in the distance in front of him before dipping back down under the water, but he had no choice but to keep swimming towards the shore. One of the onlookers who witnessed Manuel's brutal death was the owner of a small boat at the port, who immediately rushed towards Carlos to save him from the sharks. As he got within 20 feet of Carlos, the jaws of the massive great white shark opened up from the side of Carlos and bit down on his right arm and shoulder and began shaking violently. Carlos let out screams of pain when seconds later another shark surfaced from his other side and clamped down on his left arm and head, muffling his screams before taking him beneath the water. All that remained when the boat finally arrived was a pool of red blood in the water. The rescue boat stayed idle, hoping that Carlos would resurface, allowing for another chance to save him, but he never did. Both Carlos and Manuel were tragically never seen again. No remains ever washed up on the shore, and it was apparent that the pack of sharks devoured every last bit of the two 16-year-old boys. Raymond was later recovered from the breakwall and made a full recovery, but this terrifying event prevented him from ever entering the waters in the Dominican Republic ever again. Out of the 3 witnesses on the shore that day, as well as Manuel, there's been conflicting reports about the amount of sharks in the water and what happened during the attack that day. Some witnesses say that the boys had already drowned from their injuries before the sharks attacked them, while others distinctly remember seeing the 2 boys alive, desperately trying to escape. Also, the amount of sharks spotted in the water that day ranged from 5 to 8, and we'll never know exactly how many sharks were part of this man-eating deadly pack.